Hello and welcome to BloombergQuint. You're watching the fine print. The GST Council's decision to defer the timelines for the return filing process came as a huge relief for businesses. But as the idiom goes, it's just a 9-day wonder. Come October, the invoice level or the detail level returns will have to be filed by businesses, and that's a challenge that businesses, big or small, GSPs, ASPs, everyone is facing. To talk about some of those challenges and to take you through the ABC of the return filing process, I'm joined by Chirag, Mehta of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. And if you have questions for Chirag, please do write into us on our Twitter and email, or leave your comments on Facebook. We'll take up that question for you. Chirag, you've been touring towns across Maharashtra. Give me a flavor of what are the challenges that whether it's professionals, the CAs or businesses are dealing with currently.
So, as you must be knowing, Payaswini, that now the process of return filing will not be restricted to a professional handling it. There will be much more involvement that will be required from the side of the client, from the assessee side, because the level of data, the accuracy of data what the government is expecting in the GST regime is so huge and so accurate that I really fail to understand whether they have tried to match accuracy with with the practicality of getting data from like small stores which obviously have turnover more than 1.5 crores, but they have to code each and every items, and you can have more than 500 items in that store. So I see that as a big challenge. Even if that deferment has happened, even in days to come when they have to actually do that, whether that will be actually possible for them to do it.
Okay, so the partly, I think the accuracy is to address the revenue leakage that used to happen in the current indirect tax regime. But help me understand that come July 1st, right? So the return filing that will need to be done in a summary fashion, which I'll do on the 5th of September, will just have the details of my inward and outward supplies as I understand it, right? In that, to prepare that return also, what kind of details should businesses note or need to sort of now account for?
So to begin with, it will be very important that the invoices are generated. The return filing process, uploading data they have postponed. Nevertheless, the invoice that comes to a taxpayer and the invoice that he issues, the most critical aspect is again the HSN. They have to quote it. The softwares which are widely used today do not still have their patches ready. How will a person generate that invoice, which is crucial for claiming credit on 1st of July?
So, all these ASPs have been marketing their products, right? Saying that, oh, we have come out with products for SMEs, for this taxpayer, for that taxpayer bracket, and they've also put out their price point. But have you personally seen any product ready in the market, ready to use?
So, we have had demos of some ASPs.
Okay.
To make it clear, they are not ready with full-fledged software because still certain APIs are being tested. So, though APIs are being made available to GSPs and ASPs, they are still in testing mode. Whatever bugs come out, they go back to the GSP. GSP in turn goes back to the portal. So, there are maybe a GSTR 1 and 2 APIs are finalized. All other APIs, what I have heard, are still pending. But I think by mid of July or somewhere close to the end of July, they will be ready with that. That is not essential for filing of the returns because they have anyway deferred that.
Sure, okay. But so, for instance, on July 1st, if you're saying the products are not ready, how are businesses going to, I'm just trying to get a flavor of the disruptions that we can anticipate on Saturday, right?
So, what is important is to know that there is a difference between the accounting software and the software that the ASP is going to provide.
Correct. That software will pull in data from your ERP.
Correct.
And sort of
So the
format
most
it.
crucial thing is to identify the format of the invoice that goes out, to ensure that there is complete sanctity of the format of the invoice that a person receives from his supplier, whether it contains all the details. These details in turn have to be captured by the accounting software. So as and when that 2-month window goes, the data that gets exported from the accounting software is something what the ASP software requires to file the return.
Right.
So even if that deferment is there, the preparedness has to be from day one.
Right. So currently, did the invoices have some information which will sort of not be fully in compliance with the GST compliant invoice return? Because like you mentioned that the full details need to be captured in the ERP software. So today the invoice details that I get, whether as a distributor or as a retailer, is that information not adequate enough?
No, the challenge is that the person supplying me the goods or the service with the invoice, I need to check whether the HS code that is mentioned, whether all the elements that the invoice rules require are present in that invoice.
Like for instance, what do the rules specifically ask?
So you need the GST of the supplier and the recipient, you need the HS code or the SAC code of the service, you need the taxes segregated. So if it is an intra-state supply, the person would levy CGST, SGST. If it is a supply from a person located outside your state, it will be charged with IGST. Whether these details are captured properly, these need to be, at least to begin with, clients need to be very, very sure that the invoice that he is receiving captures all these data.
Sure, like you mentioned, that businesses will now need to be much more involved with filing these invoices, and there is sitting there the place of supply provisions, which I'm again told is a huge challenge for businesses to understand. What GST and numbers need to be added in invoices, and we'll come to if there are discrepancies in that. Do you think that education exists at that level? Because there could be instances where the business cannot fathom, it may not be simple enough, the transaction to fathom that what GST and numbers should be put there, or it's a combination of CGST, SGST that I need to apply, or IGST, right?
Correct. So invoice needs to capture the state code. State code would depend on the place of supply. Whether you have to charge C or S of a particular state again would depend on the place of supply. So unless these things are very clear, the preparation of invoice, which was in most cases centrally located at the head office, would again become decentralized. The from address of the invoice would change. Earlier the invoice was prepared at the central level with the head office address. Now the from address will get decentralized. So I need to identify, depending on place of supply, what the from address should be. So it may be too early for people to get educated so soon and start getting used to or understand the rules so as to not make mistakes, because if you charge a wrong tax, you will have to pay the tax which you have not paid and claim a refund of the
later,
tax which is paid incorrectly.
And the money gets blocked for that.
Correct.
For that
and
time
we are talking
period.
about huge money with 18% as tax or 28% at the highest side.
And this confusion is not coming in September. This is on July 1st when I have to write. I have to enter the right HSN codes, etc. Okay. Let me go to some of the information that might be useful for viewers to understand, which is the types of returns. Can you quickly take us through the important ones here? And on July 1st, what is it that businesses must know?
So basically, businesses don't have to file this till first week of September. On July 1st, what the accounting system should ensure is that whatever inputs these returns require should be captured at data entry level. For that, the required fields in the software should be made available, so that when you reach that point where you have to file the return, you don't have to go back and start changing the data which is already entered.
Right.
So I'll just take you through the various returns. We have the outward supplies that you make are to be captured in GSTR 1. Then GSTR 2A will be a reflection of what n number of suppliers have provided to a taxpayer, the goods that he has received or the service that he has received will be auto-populated and communicated on the portal to each taxpayer. GSTR 2, based on whatever details, like in income tax we have a 26AS form which gives details of who has deducted tax on what amount. Similarly, based on the GSTR 2A, the supplier which the supplier would receive, he would in turn prepare a GSTR 2. GSTR 2 will be basically a statement showing all the inward supplies that he has received of goods as well as of services, which may be in addition to the 2A, because it's quite possible that your supplier has not filed his statement in GSTR 1 by the due date, that is 10th of the following month.
But you know of this,
correct.
You know of those
so
supplies.
You need to self-claim that credit in your GSTR 2. Plus your details of import inward supplies will also be captured there, which again won't come from registered suppliers, so you'll have to capture it on your own.
Right.
Then we'll come to 1A. So the moment you enter details in GSTR 2, which are not available in 2A and which do not get matched, to that extent GSTR 1A will be communicated to the supplier, where in case of discrepancy, that supplier in turn may accept or reject the amendment that is made by the recipient, which will complete this process of 1, 2 and 3. For composition dealers, they have prescribed GSTR 4. Just like in case of regular dealers, we had 2A. The composition dealer will also receive details of supplies that are made to him in form 4A. For a non-resident taxable person, we have GSTR 5. For an online database access retrieval service by a non-resident Indian provided from outside India, we have 5A. 6 we have for the input service distributors, 7 the TDS, 8 the TCS statement. TDS and TCS they have deferred, which we don't know till what time. Those provisions are still.
And they are specifically for the TCS is specifically for the e-commerce
operators, and TDS is for contract payments exceeding 2.5 lakhs.
Sure. Okay. So also you've taken us through what the forms are like. Okay. I also have the process flow of the return filing, and if you could take our viewers as to what steps are these.
Yeah. So the first step is you provide details of all your outward supplies, that is in form GSTR 1.
Right.
This happens on or before the 10th.
Okay.
Now a person who is supplying goods may at regular intervals upload details of outward supplies. He need not wait till the 10th of the month.
Okay.
He may do it fortnightly, he may do it monthly, daily, depending on the volume of transactions that he is involved in. On 10th, once he files his GSTR 1, that is details of all his outward supplies, we move to step 2, where all the recipients will receive details of n number of supplies that are made from their suppliers in an auto-populated form called as 2A. As I mentioned, it's like the TDS return, TDS 26A statement. Once he gets that, he'll start preparing his GSTR 2. So there may be entries in GSTR 2A which are not there in which are not appearing in his accounting system, possibly because he's not received the goods. There may be entries which are absent, so the supplier has not complied GSTR 1 by 10th.
Right.
In that case, he can self-claim that credit.
Okay.
And once he does that, he'll upload the GSTR 2.
Right.
On uploading
This
of
is on the
GSTR 2, yeah, he has to do it after 10th but before 15th.
Okay.
At the same time, between 10th and 15th, a person who's failed to upload GSTR 1 shall not be allowed to upload those details in this time frame of 10 to 15th.
So the missing details will be then captured in next month's.
In the next process cycle.
Okay, understood.
Then once the GSTR 2, which has to be uploaded on or before 15th, details of unmatched transactions will be communicated to the respective suppliers.
Okay, this will be done by the GSTN.
This will be done by the GSTN portal.
Okay.
That will be communicated to the recipients, suppliers where the data is mismatched. Once that has happened,
but the claiming of credit has already happened, right?
Yes, so claiming of credit is self-claimed.
Okay. Yeah.
Once he receives that, he may either accept, probably he's missed out, or probably he's not given right elements. Maybe the invoice number is wrong or the date of the invoice is incorrect. So to the extent there is mismatching, he may accept the amendments that the recipient has made.
Sure.
He has 2 days to do this.
Right.
So 17th he has to be done with this. If he accepts the details, the GSTR 1 that he filed earlier gets automatically updated to that extent.
Sure, but I'm just wondering, is the 2-day time period enough for businesses who have
No, in fact,
invoices?
return filing process is not going to be a monthly process, but it's going to be a month-long process.
Correct.
So you need dedicated staff at the client's place. That's why I mentioned that this role may get split between professionals and the taxpayers. It's not going to be restricted to the office of the professional who's going to handle all this, because it's practically not possible to handle n number of clients at the same time with this kind of time frame.
Sure,
so there has to be
businesses who have invoices which run in lakhs, to be able to check with all your suppliers the kind of detail or matching that it's required on before the 17th of
So
the
we
month.
saw the GSTN portal getting jammed at places when we were going through the registration process.
Okay.
Just imagine expecting more than 3 million invoices a day.
Right.
I don't know whether the system is going to work or is going to fail. But time will say that's a change we have to face.
Sure.
Then I'll just continue with this. 17th he has a due date. Once he rectifies, we come to the GSTR 1 that he had filed earlier gets rectified. Then you have time till 20th. Till 20th the taxpayer pays his tax as well as files his monthly return in GSTR 3.
Sure.
GSTR 3 is nothing but the part A is going to be totally auto populated based on whatever details are furnished in 1 and GSTR 2.
Right.
The taxpayer is expected only to fill details of how he has paid tax, whether he is paid tax by utilizing the amount lying in his credit ledger or by paying it through cash, meaning online payment of tax challan.
Sure.
So that will complete GSTR 3.
Okay, all right. So this is for a regular taxpayer who is not availing of the composition scheme. So let me come for those businesses who avail of the composition scheme and their turnover is 75 lakhs or less in a year. Can you again help me with what for the composition taxpayer? How will that?
So for the composition taxpayer, as far as his outward supply or the sales is concerned, it's very simple because he has to not collect tax. He has a fixed rate of tax that he has to apply. He has to apply that rate on whatever his turnover is.
Sure.
But these composition taxpayers are basically really small businesses.
Yeah.
In cities like Mumbai, a turnover of 75 lakhs is not really difficult to achieve. But the people who are achieving that turnover are so small that they are also expected to identify their inward supplies, though they are not allowed to claim credit
on it,
but at the same time they will receive details of inward supplies. They have to file a form similar to the GSTR 2.
Because their inward supply may be the sale for somebody else who
Correct.
might not
See, basically what the government intends is that if his inward supply is 100, his outward supply cannot be somewhere like 50.
Correct.
So they just want to check whether there is any tax leakage or suppression of sales. So he has to pay the tax on reverse charge in some cases. He has to do everything except the bifurcation of the sales.
Okay.
So I really don't know whether presently all the composition schemes that exist in current state VAT laws are much simpler, where the details of inward supplies or purchases are not required to be given. This is going to be a big task that these small dealers are going to face.
No, but how will, so they expect, so for instance I'm A and I'm the composition scheme,
I have made a supply to you.
And you made a supply to me.
I have charged tax separately.
Correct.
Which you cannot claim
So
credit.
I can't claim that credit, but my whatever information I file on my inward supplies will be verified with what you submit.
Correct. Plus at the same time it ensures that if the person who is supplying to me suppresses that sale, the moment I claim that I have purchased, it gets matched again. So this is going to be a big challenge for the small dealers who are expected to give such level of details, that too in so many tables. They have to pay reverse charge tax. It's going to be a tough time for the composition.
You mentioned reverse charge, and one of our viewers had a query on it, and he said whether the reverse charge is payable on all or goods related to further supply only. In more clear terms, he wanted to ask if the reverse charge mechanism is payable on petty items, for instance, your photocopy, your plumber, or your auto wala, etc. And that's his question. Would you want to answer it?
So there are two kinds of reverse charges. One which are notified supplies. Presently, government has notified certain services only which are covered under reverse charge. So even if these services come from a registered taxpayer, still the liability to pay tax casts on the recipient.
Okay.
This is typically the legal services, the transport services, and few more to mention. You have another section which says that any supply that a registered person receives from an unregistered person, that means that if I go down below my office and tell my peon to get a sandwich for me, that becomes an unregistered supply.
Sure.
There is a confusion which the draft exemption list provides. It says that per day you get a window of 10,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees. Till that you can do URD purchases, unregistered purchases.
Okay.
But it's still not clear because again the exemption list is just a draft which came out immediately after the council meeting. We do not have any officially notified exemption list as on date. But I think we should expect that to come in either by today day end or in another 2 days. But it should come by another 2 days.
No, so when you say this 10,000 exemption, and it applies only to services, right?
No, it applies to any supply that you are receiving.
Any supply?
Yeah.
No, so if I have purchased goods from an unregistered supplier which is more than 10,000, what happens?
Then you have to pay tax. Not only that, you identify the HS code of the supply that he is making. If it is a service, then you identify, as you mentioned, the plumber. So you will have to identify which service classification he falls in. Further, you have to prepare an invoice in respect of such supply.
Okay.
It's not ending with just paying the reverse charge tax, but you have to also prepare an invoice for each unregistered supply that you receive.
Okay.
So that's going to be a tedious task for these small turnovers of 75 lakhs.
Yeah, and also, I mean, that may sort of deter me from, taking services or goods from an unregistered. I would rather go to an organized guy who will
Correct.
do his set of compliance by himself.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Okay. The other set or the other aspect that's going to be painful in this process is matching, right? What I have filled in as a buyer versus what my seller has entered. So let's come to what aspects will need to be matched, and again, is it on day one that I need to take care of these things, or when do I sort of wake up to this part of the form?
So see, matching is going to happen on two fronts. One is where I have claimed credit.
Right.
The other is where I have claimed a reduction in the tax that I have paid earlier. But the most important is the matching of the input credit. This is not going to happen on the first day, because for matching data I need data from the supplier as well as the recipient. Now this has been deferred for another 2 months, so this process is going to start somewhere after September.
Okay.
Invoice matching criteria. So what elements are going to be matched? The GSTN of the supplier will be matched with the GSTN of the recipient.
Okay.
The details of invoice or the debit note number that the supplier and recipient have filed. So the supplier would have filed it in GSTR 1 and the recipient would have filed it in GSTR 2. So the level of matching is going to be the invoice number or the debit note number, the invoice number or the debit note, the invoice date or the debit note date,
Okay.
and the tax amount.
Okay.
Now the biggest fear is the invoice date. What happens typically when a person receives a bill, it may not happen on the same day. So say for example on 31st July, I have ordered something, the supplier dispatches it, he prepares an invoice on 31st July. The invoice comes to the accounts department on 5th of August. Typically the entry is made on 5th of August. So people have to really demarcate between the document date and the entry date. What is going to flow into your GSTR 2 for claiming credit is the date of the document which is generated by the supplier and not the day you have booked that transaction in your system.
Received that
Correct,
invoice.
correct.
Okay. So I need to check physically on the invoice the date that my supplier has sort of put and use that in my ERP.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. So these elements are going to be matched. Now we'll go to the next slide.
Sure. This is the discrepancies, right?
No, those are the levels at which matching would take place.
Okay. So I don't think I have the other slide. You can continue. Yes.
So once these details are matched, now when will these be matched? After the due date of filing of GSTR 3, that's your monthly return. The process of matching will be done by the GSTN portal. Once this is matched, so what aspects will be matched? One is these details with the corresponding details of the supplier.
Right.
The claim of the credit is always by the recipient. Those claims will be matched by the corresponding details under these heads which the supplier has filed. The next matching would be the duty that I have paid, the IGST that I have paid on imports will be matched with the details that are furnished by IceGate, that's the custom software. Those will be matched with the IceGate. Third will be I may have claimed inadvertently tax in respect of a bill twice. So the duplication of claims, this will be the third aspect. So these three aspects will be matched and the matching in respect of invoice to invoice matching will be at these 5 levels.
Is this matching real time or is it on a particular date that?
Yeah, so as I told you, it will be taking place only after the due date of filing GSTR 3.
Okay.
So let's presume that for the month of July, the GSTR 3 has to be filed by 20th of August.
Yeah.
Any time after 20th of August, this process will start. Suppose this process ends before the end of July, end of August.
Yeah.
Then the mismatch report, we'll go to the next slide.
Sure.
The mismatch report will get generated. So where what I have claimed is exactly what was appearing in the GSTR 2A.
Right.
There will be a complete match. It will be communicated to the recipient in form MIS1. Where the claim that the recipient has made is lower than what was declared by the supplier, even in that case, the claim will be considered as matched. It's only when the claim is higher than the amount of declaration by the supplier or where the supplier has not furnished any detail, we come to a discrepancy.
Sure.
So when there is a discrepancy, in one discrepancy may be where you have claimed tax in respect of a supply twice.
Okay.
There it will be automatically added in your GSTR 3 in the subsequent month.
And I have to pay
with
that
interest.
now.
With interest from the date you have availed that credit,
Okay.
you have to pay it in the subsequent return.
Sure.
Now, where the discrepancy is due to mismatch, there will be a communication which will go to the supplier as well as the recipient. Where the supplier rectifies this mistake, he will pay the tax with interest, the credit will get matched.
Okay.
In cases where the recipient has incorrectly claimed credit, even he can delete or correct the details that he is mentioned in GSTR 2 in the subsequent month. He will also pay the tax with interest to the extent of excess credit that he has claimed. If both of them do not act, so the supplier also fails to rectify and the recipient also fails to rectify, then we have a notice in form MIS 1 that goes to the recipient,
Okay.
and a notice communication in MIS 2 which goes to the supplier. Currently these discrepancies are, these processes of matching are carried on by VAT departments, many VAT departments in the country, which happens at the fag end of 2 years. So like for 16, 17.
When the assessments come up.
Correct. Now this is going to happen on a regular basis. So as I said, this matching process will start after the due date of filing GSTR 3. The discrepancies will possibly come in the third month. If none of the parties rectify, please note this, that it will always be the recipient who is the beneficiary. He may have bona fide claim of a credit, but because of the misdeed of the supplier, he will have to pay the tax with interest.
Oh, I mean that's a default.
That's a default. It will automatically get added. If you don't pay it, you will not be able to file further returns.
Wow. Okay.
So this has been upheld by the Bombay High Court. There is
Okay.
nothing unconstitutional about this.
Okay.
And we have to live with that. So you need to do proper vendor sanitization before you start dealing with them, because this is going to be a big challenge. But I am sure in the VAT regime, the transition, and today we are used to this, I am sure in a year's time people will get used to this.
Okay, let's hope to that. Chirag, thank you for taking us through the basics of return filing. Just one last question. On July 1st, at the various points that this GST is going to affect, whether it's logistics, whether it's just the applicability of rates, or just filing of invoices, what are the disruptions you anticipate?
One very huge disruption is maybe for the first week people will stop doing business because of the confusion. People might not get supplies, or people have to take stock for the transition period,
Right.
for claiming a set off of whatever is lying in stock. People will obviously take time, like I mentioned, these small stores which are like supermarkets which have 500 items. I have heard people are going to shut shop for 3 days to take stock.
When you
So-
mean to take stock, mean to accept fresh stock?
No. To
take stock of what
quantify
they
the
find
existing
existing
stock
stock.
which they have to declare in their trans 1,
Okay.
so as to enable them to take
Take
credit of the
on
stock.
the transition stock. Okay. Well,
So-
we'll see what happens over the weekend, and much of this will surface, I'm guessing, on Monday, Tuesday, when
Right.
businesses will open across towns, and I'm guessing the disruptions will more be in the tier 2 cities.
Correct.
Chirag, thank you for joining us and
Thank you so
explaining
much.
us the basic concepts, and thank you so much for watching. But if you still have more questions on what Chirag explained to all of us, do write into us on our Twitter and Facebook or email ID, and we'll take your questions to Chirag. Thank you so much for watching.